guys, thanks for joining us again this week. We've been, what have we been doing this week? What have you been doing this week?
Whole lot of nothing.
Yeah,
Just,
you got a little bit of a haircut. I mean, you got the hat on, but
yeah, it's not ready yet. We went a little too short.
not ready for a public display.
No.
I need a haircut.
Yeah.
And a beard trim.
Leah said she wouldn't talk to me if I didn't trim my beard. So
yeah, it does look.
I did that.
Yeah,
and then while I had the shears out, I just cut down the middle, and then
I like it. But it's been a big week. Here in Cookeville opened up, and I got to go back to Father Tom's.
You did?
Yeah. Nobody was there. It was me and my
Somebody
buddy
stole the. I saw a post today. Someone had stole like the garden hose attachment.
Okay.
But I don't know who was posting, but they're like, no big deal. Probably someone wanted to fill something up and forgot about it. You're at a bar. There's probably some inebriated people. It's like, just please let me know where it is or bring it back. Because when we go to Tom's a lot, and I never feel unsafe there.
Oh no,
I don't.
Yeah,
it's not really the crowd.
I don't feel unsafe, but maybe we should probably look into this because I hear that there's someone going around and just stealing those all over town.
Yeah,
but
that was a very, very smart thing for to know the crowd and just assume that the person who did that just made a mistake.
Yeah, well, that's what it was, right? Yeah. He was assuming people were not doing something nefarious. It was just an honest.
The other option is, like you said, someone's going around stealing. Garden hose attachments.
Assuming somebody is nefarious in all their actions, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And how they got there. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about this week a little bit. Well, not garden hoses.
No.
That would be funny though if we were pivoting into a garden hose ad and I'm like, I don't even know a garden hose company.
I don't either.
Costco.
I assume Walmart or Lowe's just makes them or buys them.
Yeah. Somewhere in China.
These are ours. Yeah.
But we're going to be talking about, we kind of said it last week, but we're going to be looking at this Malcolm Gladwell book, Talking to Strangers, over the next couple episodes.
Yeah.
And just kind of, it's almost like it's not like a book review, but it's like I don't know even what we would call it, but it's just thinking about those topics.
Yeah, this is where my English degree will come in and useful. But, it's like a criticism, not so much a criticism of the book, but a criticism on where we are filtered through this, the info in this book or the lessons you can learn from this book.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to teach a lesson, just to observe and look at it,
Yeah.
Or put it all together.
Yep. And so Malcolm Gladwell is known for, he's a data-driven guy. And so his books, when he releases a new book, there's generally been a bunch of research, a bunch of interviews, a bunch of testimony. There's a lot that has gone into putting this book together.
Yeah.
And that's true with Talking to Strangers too. It was a few-year project. And
really?
Yeah. And so, even if you look at where the book begins and how he opens it, he's talking about a traffic stop gone awry with Sandra Brown. Sandra.
I'm blanking.
Sandra
now.
Bland.
We've talked about her before in the show.
It's Sandra Bland, and back in 2015. And he even says in the opening, and I thought it was good because this book came out earlier. Well, it came out in 2019. But he said, this is why am I starting a book in 2019 with a conversation that most people have said, okay, we've talked about that. Let's file it away. Now we'll move on. He said, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to move on from this.
No.
This is not something we need to stop talking about.
Right. Yeah. And it seems like we're not ready. I mean, you saw a lot of the stuff that's going on right now. Ahmad, I forget his last name, but his, and it seems like it's week after week, there's another case of this. And so we're clearly not ready to stop talking about it because it's a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah. And we'll talk in a couple episodes more details about the actual idea of police and traffic stop because he gets back into it at the tail end of the book in a deeper way. But I think that's kind of how this book starts off, is talking about two strangers meeting, and for some reason something negative came out of that when neither of them went into it with the idea of it being negative.
Right.
You know what I mean? But they just eventually ended up there. And so that's kind of what we're talking about. is how do we talk to strangers, and how do we go into a conversation with strangers or interact with people in our everyday in a way that is respectful, and you can trust them and they can trust you, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And so we decided we'd want to talk about like the first 5 chapters, I guess. Yeah. The first one's kind of clunky, and it's more of like a stage setter, but it's like, so I didn't know this, but like back in the, Fidel's heyday, he pulled, I forget the name of the
Fidel Castro.
Yeah, Fidel. Yeah. So he like just ran the CIA around for like years. They had this informant down in Cuba, the CIA did, called he was called the Mountain Climber. And like they had found this video, or like this collection of videos, and it's basically the way he said it was, the way they're filming, it's like they had a camera on my shoulder the entire time, and I had no idea. And so it just completely caught them off guard. And then they asked for some of the tape. And so then Fidel, like in his little revenge way, sent it over to them, dubbed in English.
He redubbed it in English so they would be able to understand.
So it was one of those, like, if the CIA, the guys trained to know when someone's lying or when they're being led on, failed that hard, then what hope do we, or how do we see that in our daily lives when we're not trained to like know who's lying? And can we be trained? Like, why is this not a trait that we have developed, throughout the years, throughout generations, to know when someone is lying? Because we're all bad at it.
And it was in the Cuba story, and we won't sit on it long. You can pick up the book and read it, or you can even Google search that. It's a widely reported happening. But they found, like, it was like 12 active CIA assets in Havana.
Double assets.
It was like, it was everybody. I mean, it was their whole, what they were getting for information, and then it was being confirmed by each other. So they thought they were killing it in Cuba for information.
And it turns out, like you said, and then Fidel had just planted all these guys, and they were just creating information. And so we had no idea what was going on, but we thought we did,
And to the top level, a woman that was working in the DIA, which we might end up talking more about her, but Anna Montez, she ends up, they call her in the I think it was DIA, wasn't it? The defense. They call her the Queen of Cuba because she's so good with analytics in Cuba. Like, she's so good at analyzing data and presenting it to them and what's going on and stuff. She was working for Cuba the whole time before she ever got there.
And I think they had it on record that she's like done the most damage of any like double agent in the history. And when they caught her, they found her, like, her current codes in her purse. They found a transponder in a shoebox, in her closet. Like, it was not.
She was incredibly sloppy, and no one caught it.
But and I think they even said, like, she had been, reprimanded a few times for being kind of sloppy on the job. She wasn't a great agent, but somehow.
There was a review. He interviews one of her superiors, and he's like, yeah, I routinely said she wasn't, she shouldn't have this title of Queen of Cuba, because she's just really bad at her job. He didn't think she was a spy. He just thought she was terrible at her job. And he goes, well, now looking back through it. I mean,
that's a reflection on how bad we are at filtering, lies and truth. I think this was in like one of the other chapters, but they had this study where they had 2 people come into a room, and the interviewer, so 3 people in a room, an interviewer and 2 students, and the interviewer would ask questions, and the goal was, if you get, a good percentage of them right, you're going to get like $100. So to a college student, that's, crazy good money. And so the interviewer leaves the room and leaves the test on the table, like with the answer sheet on the table. And it's, it's obvious what happens next. And then they come back in and they separate the 2 people, and they ask the one person, hey, did you cheat? And they're like, no. And then she's like, okay, well, I'm going to ask the next person if you guys cheated? Is she going to say the same thing? And then, you know, some people would be like, I mean, yeah, I did. Or some people would be so confident, be like, no, I didn't cheat. And then, so they take that away, and then they have, you know, a fourth or a third student listen to these tapes and decide who's lying and who's telling the truth. And for the most part, it was like a 50-50, they were right or wrong.
They couldn't tell,
But it wasn't a coin flip. Like, it was the people who were telling the truth, they got all those right. And then they got half of the people who were telling a lie wrong, depending on if they were confident or if they were shaky. Like, if someone looks like they're lying, we're going to assume that they're lying. You know what I mean? But there was another student who like was just super nervous.
He was nervous. Yeah, I remember
and
that.
Like sweating.
He was telling the truth.
But he was telling the truth. He's just like really nervous, you know? But everyone said, I think it was like 10% of people said that he was telling the truth. Like the other 90% of people were wrong. And it's all this like perception.
Yeah, that's a personal experience.
Right.
And interaction with somebody, you know, and I think that rings true for us even today when I'm interacting with people. How much am I reading their person? Like, to be honest, you know, looking at Anna back then, you know, in her position where the guy was like, she just wasn't any good at her job.
Right.
I've worked with a lot of people where I'm looking at them, I'm like, man, they always get something done. You know what I mean? Like, they accomplish something, but man, it's just a whirlwind of mess to get there. Like, they're super uncontrolled. They're super like out of sorts. Like, it's a chaotic way to get there. And me, in my mind, it says, hey, in that chaos, that's where someone can lie to you and deceive you and stuff. But that's not always the case. No. And I think that's what that study they did kind of shows, is that like a person's persona and how they carry themselves or communicate doesn't always tell you. You can't always read that as a tell, you know.
He brought in like the Hitler thing. I hate to bring everything back to Hitler, but there
so
was
much goes back to Hitler though.
It's a lesson we weren't ready to learn, you know. But like, so it was Churchill and who was Chamberlain?
Was
he
was
like the secretary
minister.
Oh, okay. He was
the prime minister. He was the outgoing prime minister right before.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
He lost his job because of how bad he was. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so he goes and meets Hitler.
Yeah. Chamberlain.
And Hitler promised that, you know, we're going to take this one territory. That's all we want. And, you know, he was a little weird. He was a little like, he was a man of the people. So like, I think at one point Chamberlain mistook him for like the coat guy and almost handed him his coats. But like Hitler was very real, shook him with both hands, which Chamberlain knew that's only what he did with, you know, his most trusted people or people that he really appreciated. And so Chamberlain came back and was like, we're good, man. I talked to Hitler and everything's fine. And then you've got Churchill, who had never met Hitler.
Never met him.
Only read about him in newspaper and was like, we can't trust this man. Like this guy's
insane.
Crazy. You don't trust a single word he said. And then like, who was right of that? The guy who fell for the double handshake and should we be that way too? Like, should we like limit ourselves to social interactions? I don't think that's healthy, but like it's such a heavy book. I'm just struggling to like understand what lesson do I need to learn
in that circumstance too. I think you can look at that because that's a big world stage. We know that, we know in retrospect, 2020 vision tells us Hitler was an evil man who was also insane. Like we know that now. Okay, for sure. But back then, it was not the world we have now. No. Interaction between world leaders is not what we had now. They did not have that kind of access.
And Germany was coming out of like World War I, and they like coming out.
They had a revolution within their own country coming out, and that's where we get Hitler from. Is coming out of that. But we've got all the world leaders on the side of good. You know what I mean? You know, of us and Great Britain. The only world leader that ever got to face meet from the what are we called? Not the Axis. We're the good guys.
Allies.
The Allies. From the Allies, the only person that sat down with Hitler at all ever was Chamberlain.
Yeah.
And he read him completely wrong.
Completely wrong. Yeah. I mean, he was celebrated when he came back home. Yeah. Everyone was like, yeah, you did it.
He even brought a document. You know, like he had Hitler sign a document saying,
I got the paper.
I'm only going to invade this part of Czech because it's mostly German population and it should be ours. And then he signed that document. And he believed it. And that document lasted for 6 months. And then at that point, he had invaded Poland.
Yeah.
And the world was at war. I mean, that's 6 months later, you know?
I mean, it's kind of crazy. But like you said, that was big stage. But then Gladwell brings it back a little bit and he's talking about judges. Like most judges want to meet you face to face.
Yeah.
And
if I'm going to be judged on something, I want to meet the judge face to face. I want him to see me.
If you're hiring somebody, you interview them, you know,
bring them in for the interview,
shake hands, see what they're like in front of your face. And
Dave Ramsey famously does like 5 or 6 interviews before he hires somebody.
Really?
In person, yeah.
I didn't know that. That's cool. Well, I mean, according to I guess we gotta mention Dave Ramsey every episode.
We have to slide him in. Sorry. Hey,
anyway,
in the world of podcast, he is close to king. So, you know.
I mean, he started popping in my feed anyways, I mean,
let's move on.
Yeah. But they were talking about judges and they took the judges' reviews of people and like their sentencing and if they put them on bail, if they didn't, and they compared it with this, it was like a computer program.
Yeah.
That just distilled all the information without the face-to-face meeting.
Yeah.
And the computer program got the rulings right. Like, I think Gladwell said it wasn't even close. It was like 70-30, 80-20, something like that. But then, like, that just seems that's
what they were doing. They were bail hearings. And so people that would come in and they've gotten picked up and thrown in jail, they're trying to get out on bail. Okay. Mm-hmm. We're not judging whether they've actually committed the act. We're trying to figure out, will they go out and nefariously create another act after this, or should we hold them in jail until the sentence?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So judges would meet with people. They'd hear they'd read the document. They'd hear the prosecutor and defense attorney talk, and then they would a lot of times engage with the defendant, right? And so after evaevaluating,
they wanted to look them in the eye. They wanted to see
this guy looks like a decent guy. He dressed up for court today.
Yeah,
or
this guy missed 2 of his court. You know, or he's got his own side of the story. Or this guy looks really washy. I don't trust him not to break it. But like they were getting the rulings wrong for the most part, compared to the other way around.
People were leaving there and doing some sort of other illegal act.
Right.
While on bail But
that's I think that's like the heavy question we've got to ask. It's like, so do we just process everybody without, do we change the due process? Because that, to me, that just seems very, unconstitutional. Do we put computers in front of decisions whether human beings get locked up or not? You know what I mean? Like,
we do. We like to face our accusers, right?
Yeah,
we like to have the freedom of facing our accusers. We like to have the freedom.
It seems like a human right. Like I want to go and plead my case. Why I don't need to be put into jail until we get to the actual,
That's also
judgment.
that just feels human.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's how we interact. We get in the same room and we talk about things. Like that's human. So like everything inside of me wants it to be a human process. But the data that he pulled, I mean, it's incredible. Like how much
it makes you do a double take.
Yeah, because maybe we need an automated process that just checks boxes for people that are going for bail hearings. You know what I mean? Like
that's what one could be led to believe. But then he lands on this theory of like default to truth.
Yeah.
Which seems to be the fiber that keeps society going. You know what I mean?
I assume somebody's telling me the truth.
Yeah. It's where, if you're in Starbucks, this was like, I forget the example he gave, but it was pretty close to this.
Yeah.
If I'm going to get coffee and the cashier gives me the price, I'm not going to like Google the tax code and look at the board and, figure all that up, because I'm going to hold up the line and everyone's going to get really mad at me.
Yeah.
So it's safe to assume that they're telling the truth, that they wouldn't lie to every single customer, that they wouldn't target me. No one wants to be at the restaurant with that friend.
No, definitely.
Who is like, this bill's 50 cents off. You know, you need to fix this now, and I need to talk to your manager. Like the usually you don't invite that guy out a second time, or like on a date. Like if that's your first date, you're like, I think I've seen enough, you know. And that's kind of where he lands at, is that the benefit of defaulting to truth and getting, you know, screwed over every once in a while is way better than just assuming everyone's going to lie, because then you're living in a bunker. You know what I mean? Like you can't have a society with that.
Yeah. Well, you lose the humanism of it, the humanity. I mean, it all leaks away. We're interacting with each other as computers without it. You know what I mean? And I think that's the danger of it, you know? And I think when I originally read this book, I emotionally went through like, oh my gosh, I wish I could live my life with less default to truth. And then you get about 2/3 of the way through it, and I was like, man, I wish I was all default to truth, and I wish I wasn't so analytical. And then by the end of it, you're seeing this like compromise of like where it needs to be and where it doesn't need to be. Like that was my emotional journey. And so I have to say, like, I am less, when you read the first chapters of this book, and I hope all of you guys that are listening to us, I hope you pick this book up and read it. We get paid per down on the skin. But that would be nice. Malcolm, hook us up. You're my dog. But no, you read those first few chapters and you're like, man, if the spies can't get it right, if the judges can't get it right, there's no hope for me. And I'm going to walk through my day and be taken advantage of by everyone. I mean, that's, you know.
Yeah, and we're pretty deep in the episode, but I'll skim over I forget what chapter 5 was called, but it was talking about Sandusky, you know, the Penn State defensive coordinator who
finally hated hearing about.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Over and over. And you're just like, can we just throw this guy away?
Yeah.
And then it also talked about like the Olympic gymnast doctor who was just like
taking advantage of.
Yeah. I mean, while parents were in the room and, you know, taking advantage of people's lack of knowledge on the process to where like, I think one of the doctors said,
and trust for an official. You know,
one of the doctors said, trust for an official. One of the parents said, you know, if no one other than God knows how to do this stuff better than this guy does, you know, that was his reputation. Yeah. So like everyone just assumed he was
a good person all the way around. Yeah.
And so Gladwell's, I guess, position at the end of that was that if we defaulted to lies, like no sane parent would ever send their kid to a sports program, and no sane person would ever be a coach. You know, like we can't live like that.
Yeah.
But so you shouldn't blame these parents for defaulting to truth. We should give them sympathy. It's like, you know, this could have happened to anyone. You know, how many? It's not that you miss the red flag. It's how many red flags do there have to be before we break this default to truth?
Yeah, and I think that's some of it too. It doesn't mean you were ignorant.
No.
Of all you were ignorant of it, but you weren't like intentionally ignorant.
Careless. Yeah.
You weren't careless.
Yeah. It was just.
Yeah, it's built into us that, of course, for human interaction, we have to trust. Yeah, we have to trust.
And there's a reason that the wolf wears the sheep's clothing, you know, in the old fables, because we trust it's a sheep. You know,
if the wolf shows up just dressed as a wolf,
you know, everyone's going to run away. Yeah, of course. You know, that's red flag. He looks different. He's got sharp teeth, but you know, if he looks like me and he's, you know, in the community, trusted, like if there's other people, man, he checks out by all the visual tests. And then we get, you know, at the end, an unfortunate, you know, outcome from dealing with them. Like it's just, that's the cost of having a society.
Yeah, it is. And that's the cost of, that's a good way to put it. I don't know if Gladwell put it that way or if you did, but
I'm sure he did. Yeah.
But that is the cost of living in a society and living with other people. If you want to be a hermit and live inside of a mountain, I mean, you don't have to default to truth at all.
You can distrust everyone, have mines lining your property.
You can, you know what I mean? You can
do that. Yeah.
You know, you can build that bunker, but like, but if you want to like interact and have relationships with people and good human healthy interaction, you're going to have to default to truth some.
Yeah.
And that means we're going to get burned sometimes. But you know, do we have the right processes in place when we find out that we've been burned? You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a good, That's maybe a future episode, but
yeah, I mean, this will probably be a 2 or 3 part at least, because I mean, we've talked about a lot here, and it's just information. Read the book while we're doing this, and we'll be happy to put out, the final episode of this as like, what do we think about all of it?
Yeah,
I think now we're just reading.
Well, we've read it before.
Yeah.
But we're going back through it now.
Yeah, this morning I listened to a few chapters again, and I mean, I'm excited to talk about it next week. And
and I'd encourage everybody that's jumping in with us here and listening and having these conversations with your friends and people around you. Jump in and grab this book, pick it up. We're like through chapter 5 is kind of what we've talked about anyway. That will bring you up to speed. So, and
it took me about 2.5 hours to get to chapter 5. So by next week, I don't know how many chapters. 5 seems like a lot to squeeze in an episode. But that was the first 2 parts of the book. So we might go with 2 parts again, or just 1, and expound on it a little bit more. But you're looking at like a 5-hour read. It's well worth it, I think.
Yeah, the book moves quickly, and of course on Audible too. It's done well. He's got a he's even got a theme
very
song.
Well produced.
He's got a theme song for the book.
He reads it himself, and so it's very like, can you believe this?
And he also people that he interviewed, he uses their voice saying their words. And for like, if he's citing a news source and he has a copy of that audio, he uses the audio from the actual news source. So it's an interesting engagement. So Malcolm Gladwell's Talking to Strangers. If you want to pick that up, that'd be awesome. We'd love to know your comments on it. Leave that down below, or questions on it.
Or anything we've talked about so far. Do you disagree with? Because I mean, me and you both kind of agree with it. We might not agree in what results we want to see, but like the process itself, it's like, we need to be more trusting, more inviting to people, and letting them in a little bit further than today. It just seems like we're all putting our guards up, and we talked about this in our conversations episode. Like, at some point we've got to put our weapons down, because we can't walk around with swords or whatever. I'm being ambiguous. I don't want to point to a different issue, but we can't walk around armed and say, okay, just, I just want to talk to you like a person. It's like, well, it's hard to talk when you've got your shield up, or you've got your barricade up.
What we talked about in that conversations episode was somebody's got to choose to do it first.
Exactly.
And we were encouraging all of us to choose to do it first. Be the one that does that. I do too, and
I've got to tell myself to do that when I'm in, a conversation that is not being productive. I'm like, am I in this conversation with my guard up when I don't need to be,
and that's
most of the time it's you don't need to have it up. You know what I mean?
And this book talks about, obviously strangers, but it's applicable everywhere. And I would say, anybody that's got, a family member that doesn't quite jive, or that's constantly pointing you out, anyone's got an ex-wife or or something like that type of relationship. I think this can be applied everywhere. It's not just the stranger. It can be in all of our relationships. Are we walking in with our, with our weapons up and ready to fight? Especially when somebody comes at us with what feels like a weapon.
Exactly.
When somebody brings an allegation to me, walks outside and is like, why you got all this junk? I live in the little condo community. Why do you have this stuff out in your yard?
I thought you were living in New York City.
Oh, yeah, this is my apartment in New York City. It's actually Jerry Seinfeld and I live together.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool.
But when somebody attacks us or comes to us with some sort of unfounded view, or they've read it wrong, or they don't know all the information, when they come to us with that attack, how are we responding in a way that's not defensive?
I think a good point that he made was that we always assume that, like, we are complex, we're very nuanced. When we come to a decision, if you would just see things the way I see it, you would understand why I did this. But then when we are judging strangers, we just put them in a box and say, I can read you better than you can read yourself, and I've got to check it. We've got to check it when we're reacting. It's like, okay, it's the golden rule, man. Like if I said something dumb or I was being a little heated, I would want someone to be like, hey man, are you okay? Rather than, you know what, this is how you always are. You know, you're just dumb. You're just stupid. You're a hothead. You know, like we need to default back to that golden rule of, hey, let's react to people how we would want them to react to us, you know? So
absolutely. Cool. Well, guys, thanks for joining us in the conversation. Always over on YouTube is the video, and then our audio is everywhere podcasts can be listened to. If you've missed some, this is episode 13 for us. So if you, that's crazy to think about.
That is.
But if you've missed any of the other 12, go back and listen to them. They're all pretty quick listens, around that 20 to 30-ish minute mark. So we shoot for 20. We blew through it this week, I'm sure.
Yeah, we really did.
Sorry. All right. It's okay. Well, cool. Well, thanks for joining in, guys.
Yeah, see you.